Hi everybody and welcome once again to Ruby's Classic Cooking. And today I'm making hot cross buns. Yum. Special Easter treat for everybody. Alrighty, so I'm going to start off. As you can see, I've gotten my bread machine out again, and this is going to make the dough for my hot cross buns. Simpler and easier than trying to do it the hard way. So, the bread machine does all the work. And if you don't have a bread machine, well, you know what? If you scour your thrift stores, I bet you can find a really good one for a very cheap price. Well, $7 at a Salvation Army thrift store. And it served me for 7 or 8 years, and in fact it still works, but it makes such an alarming noise that I had a chance to buy this one, brand new in the box, from a thrift store online auction, and yep, it's been worth it. Brand new in the box. It even had the VHS tape from 1993 still in it. Never been opened. Factory sealed. Anyway, so I'm going to start off with my hot cross bun recipe. And by the way, if you buy one at a thrift store and it doesn't have a recipe book with it, you can always email the manufacturer a recipe book. And I did that, the first one I bought, and they sent me one. It's photocopies of it, but it had all the recipes in it and all the information, which was fantastic. Anyway, I'm going to start right off here with I'm going to follow my hot cross bun recipe in my cookbook. And this one's a Black & Decker all-in-one, what's it called? Yeah, an all-in-one bread machine. So if you have one of these, the recipe in your book will be the same. If you don't, it may be different. But anyway, I'm going to be making the dough in here. Then I'll be making my hot cross buns by hand later. So, 1.25 cups of milk, homogenized whole milk. That's a 3.25% milk or whatever, 300 milliliters. And I'm going to add to that a beaten egg. Now, you can get out your stand mixer, your handheld mixer, your egg beater, your whisk, whatever you want to do. But you know what I'm doing this morning? I'm using a fork. I'm going to use a fork from the drawer and the same bowl, the same measuring pitcher I just measured my milk in. So just going to beat this up a little bit. There, a few beats with my fork, and there you go. See? All right, in it goes. Now I'm just going to slice 1/4 cup of butter, which is 62 milliliters according to my package of butter, right off of my block here, and straight into my milk. There you go, done. Next up, after my butter, goes in 1/3 cup of sugar. Don't worry, metric people, I'll have all the metric equivalents in the description file down below. And on top of my sugar, 3.5 cups of Canadian all-purpose flour. So there you go. I'm not going to sift it or do anything to it. I'm just going to dump it right in here, which I wouldn't even bother putting in a separate bowl if I weren't doing this as a demo for you. And now into that goes my salt, 1 1/4 teaspoon. So here's my teaspoon. I'm just going to measure in here. I've got 1/4 here, 1/4 teaspoon. Oh, that's a half. Got 1/4 teaspoon. I'll just put 1/4 teaspoon in here. There we go. That's my salt in. And now for my spices, because this is hot cross bun material, I'm putting in nutmeg, I'm putting in cinnamon, and I'm putting in some cloves. So 1 level teaspoon, more or less, of cinnamon. There we go. That goes in on top of my flour. And change teaspoons to 1/2 teaspoon for my nutmeg. 1/2 teaspoon of my nutmeg. Gotta make sure that's pretty well level. And 1/4 teaspoon of cloves. I'll just use the same teaspoon I used to measure the salt. And there we go. 1/4 teaspoon of cloves. And now, the only ingredient left that I have to put in is my yeast. Now, I just buy plain dried yeast. You can buy a special bread machine yeast or whatever. I find this works really well, just as it is. And it says to put in 1 1/2 teaspoons of yeast. Well, this is a 1 1/2 teaspoon here, 7 milliliters. And I like to add a little extra yeast just to give a little help. I try not to overdo it because sometimes I have and it rises right up and hits the top of my bread machine. It's better if you don't overdo it, but I like to add a bit extra just because it's better to have your bread rise a little bit more than usual than to be flat. So now this goes into the bread machine, and whatever your bread machine says for your dough cycle, lock that down, close my lid, and I just punch my bread type, which is dough, and there, that just sits there for 2 hours. But I have to get something else ready to go in here. And I'm going to add some fruit to my hot cross buns because you absolutely have to have raisins in them. And I like to add some candied mixed peel. And when I have some left from doing my fruit cake at Christmas, I like to add a half a cup of this leftover candied mixed peel to my hot cross buns. It's a nice flavor to them. There we go, it's a little special treat. And then I add 3/4 of a cup of raisins to that. So hopefully I have enough in this bag. If I don't, well, I'll have to open another bag. Oh, good, just enough, because that gives me a cup and a half of fruit. There we go. Now that, when my bread machine beeps for its add something to the machine cycle, I'll be adding this in here, and that will be, I think it's at, when my timer says 116, then it will beep, and I'll add my fruit to that. So, all right, there go the beeps, and in goes the fruit. There it is, all in, good. And the next time I'll bring it back, it'll be when this is all finished in another hour and a half, another hour 15, and I'll be making them into a hot cross buns. It's been 2 hours, and here is my dough in here. It's a little sticky right now, so I'm just going to spread some flour out here, and I'm going to drop my dough right on top of my flour. So I'm just going to knock this camera down so you can see what I'm doing here. Out of the bread machine bucket it comes, right onto my thing here. Okay, and this is kind of a sticky mess inside of here, which I gotta peel out of here. Not a problem. This will all resolve itself when I do adding my extra flour to this. This means that my dough is a little sticky here. A lot sticky, actually. And I'm just going to sprinkle a little more flour on top of here. Now I'm just going to work this flour into my very sticky dough. This, well, it looked okay on top. Stuff in the middle and at the bottom needs a bit more flour worked into it, which you will sometimes find when you're doing this. There's probably a bit more liquid in that candied fruit that I added that wasn't really accounted for in the recipe. So I'll just do this up and it will be fine. Now, alright, I've got my scale here and I'm going to weigh my whole mass of dough. Then I'm going to divide by 18 because I'm supposed to make this into 18 rolls. And then I'll know that each one needs to weigh a certain amount, and then they'll all be the same size. So 1,386 grams. Okay, divide that by 18 in your head. Ha! Alright, I'm weighing my dough on my scale. 1,386 grams divided by 18 equals 77. So each one of these rolls has to weigh 77 grams. So let's get chopping. I'll do 16. 77 grams. There you go. 1. All right. Doing okay here at the 77 grams thing. Okay. All right, here's my 18 77-gram balls of dough. Here's my pan. I'm going to pan these on. So now I'm just going to take my little buns and I'm going to shape them into a flat, kind of a flat rounded bun. I'm going to put them on my baking tray. So 9 per, because I have 18 here to get on. I've got two that I'm going to put them on. So I'm just going to put these here. Then I'm going to let these rise for half an hour, covered up with a tea towel. Let them rise for half an hour. Then I'm going to cut a cross on the top of each one in the crust. And then I'm going to bake them. I preheated 350 degree Fahrenheit. That's about 173 degrees Celsius oven. Don't worry, metric people. All of this will be in the description file below. I'm just gonna put a little flour because this dough is still a little sticky inside, so that's okay. Let's put 9 of these on each one. There you have it. All 18 are now done. And I've spaced them out. They're supposed to be 2 inches apart on your baking tray. There we go. And now I'm going to cover these with a tea towel and let them rise for half an hour. And then I'll be back to show you how they've risen up in a half an hour. Okay, now it's been a half an hour and my buns have risen. There we go. Let me just bring these up here and show you. There we go. There's the 9 of them on here, and the other ones are on the other tray. And now, the next step of my process, which is, now it says to take an egg and beat it and add a tablespoon of water to it. But you know what? A little bit of milk works just as well to glaze your buns. So I'm just using a little bit of milk here in my bowl, and I'm just going to glaze my buns with that. Brush them on with my pastry brush, a little bit of milk. A little dab on each one. Now you're supposed to grease your sheet here too. Grease your cookie sheet. I'm not doing that because this is a stoneware Pampered Chef one and it doesn't need to be greased. Otherwise I would be greasing this pan. So let's just put these on, put the milk on. Now the next thing you do is you cut your cross with a sharp knife. These are called hot cross buns after all, so 1/4 of an inch deep, that's about, let me see, 2.54 centimeters to an inch. 1/4 of that would be about 1/2 centimeter. Yeah, 1/4 of an inch or about 1/2 centimeter. So I'm just going to cut these down like this, down into my buns. Let's do the straight cut first. And now I'm going to do I'm going to turn myself rather than, I can turn these too. And now I'm going to cut these at 90 degrees and make my 1/4 inch deep, 2 millimeter deep cross. There we go. Across my buns. And now these are going straight into my preheated 350 degree, which is about 275 Celsius. I'll have all these measurements and everything in Celsius in my recipe. These are going to go right into my oven for 15 to 18 minutes, my preheated oven, and then they'll be ready to be glazed. I'll be back when I'm taking them out of the oven, all golden brown and delicious. And we're not quite finished yet because while we're waiting for our buns to cook in the oven, we're going to make our glaze. So this is a tablespoon of milk. Oops, I don't know if you can see that or not, which I've measured out into this bowl. And I'm going to add to that 1/4 of a teaspoon of almond extract. So there's hardly anything left in this bottle. In fact, I think there's only 1/4 of a teaspoon left in here, so I'm just going to dump it in here. That empties my bottle. And to that, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of icing sugar, confectioner's sugar, whatever kind of sugar you use in your neck of the woods to make icing, to make buttercream icing. So I'm just going to stir these together. This is going to make my glaze. Now in hot cross buns, you have a nice glaze. You follow your cut marks on your buns to make a nice cross on top of your hot cross buns. Now in the recipe it says to put this on as soon as they come out of the oven, but you know what? Voice of experience speaking here. If you do that, this icing glaze will just melt and they won't look like anything. It'll just be like this sticky thing on your buns. So I usually wait till they're cool to room temperature and then I put the glaze on them. I want this to be fairly thick. Not as thick as a buttercream icing, but thick enough to be a glaze that will dry on your hot cross bun and leave a nice cross-shaped piece of icing on top of it. So you just stir this in here. Doesn't take very long. All I do is just take a fork and a bowl from my cupboard and just mix it together. If it's not thick enough, add a bit more icing sugar to it. That's the thing about icing, is it's like bread dough. Sometimes your moisture level in your air is a bit higher, a bit lower, and you need to adjust that to suit the local atmospheric conditions. Well, that looks a pretty good glaze. And I'm just going to dribble that across off of my fork and make my cross of icing on top of my buns. Once they're cooled, there we go. I'll just put that on one side, because this time it seems to have worked out for the recipe. You know what? That almond extract smells really, really good. So that gives them a really special flavor. The almond extract does. Anyway, I'll be back in about 15 minutes when those buns come out of the oven, and I'll show you my nice, lovely hot cross buns hot out of the oven. Hi everybody, here I am back again, and here are my first batch of 9 hot and fresh out of the oven. Look at this, 18 minutes in the oven, and they are ready to eat, except they burn your mouth right now. A little bit of icing, which I'm going to drizzle on there. Once they've cooled off, then we'll see what they look like. Anyway, bring these back here. I hope you enjoyed my video today, and I hope you'll enjoy eating some of these when you try this recipe at home. Like, subscribe, comment, try the recipe, use your bread machine. It's there to make your life easier and create wonderful, fantastic buns and breads and things, and hot cross buns and special breads that will save you huge amounts of money at the grocery stores and make lovely food that's better and of better quality than what you would pay somebody for at the grocery store. So I hope that you enjoyed this recipe today, and come back and watch me next time on Ruby's Classic Cooking. Bye for now.